You know what's worse than getting stabbed in an alley? Watching the man you love board a plane with someone else while you're still bleeding on the sidewalk. That was the first thought that ripped through my head the night everything fell apart. And the cruel part is, it wasn't just any man, it was him. The one person I thought would choose me no matter what. It all started in the heart of New Haven, Connecticut. The kind of city that pretends to sleep but really just tosses and turns all night. College kids spilled out of bars, their laughter drunk and sloppy. Neon signs blinked against brick walls like restless eyes, and the shadows in the alleys waited for unlucky souls. We were those souls. Ethan and I had just come from a late-night diner. My arm hooked around his waist because my ribs were already aching from the scuffle we'd gotten into earlier that week. Nothing serious, or so I thought. But trouble never really cared about timing. The men came out of nowhere too. Maybe 3 of them, knives glinting like hungry teeth under the streetlights. By the time it was over, Ethan's shirt was torn, blood soaking into the fabric near his collarbone, and my own leg throbbed where a blade had kissed too close to the bone. We stumbled, half running, half falling, until we found ourselves sprawled on his porch steps, panting, broken, and terrified. I thought that night would bind us together even tighter. Shared wounds have a way of doing that. But I didn't expect his past to knock louder than my present. Her name was Olivia, his childhood friend, a girl with doe eyes and a fragile frame who'd been battling a rare disease overseas. When Ethan got the call that her condition had worsened and a last hope treatment was waiting for her in Switzerland, he didn't hesitate. Not for a second. "I have to go," he said, his voice shaking not from pain, but from urgency. I stared at him, barely able to breathe. "Go? Ethan, you're bleeding. We're both look at us. We can't even stand straight." "I know," he whispered, pressing his forehead against mine, his breath hot and desperate. "But if I don't go now, she might not make it. She needs me." The silence between us after that was heavier than the pain in my leg. I couldn't tell if I was more furious at the situation or at myself for realizing that no matter how much love we'd shared, I wasn't the first person he thought to save. When he left, he didn't leave me entirely alone. He left me with his younger brother, Caleb. Caleb quiet, sharp-eyed, the type of guy who rarely spoke unless his words had weight. He was 3 years younger, tall like Ethan but leaner, his presence both grounding and unsettling. I never thought much of him beyond the kid brother who always stayed in the shadows. But shadows can surprise you. He was the one who cleaned the blood from my leg that night, who cursed under his breath when I winced, who pressed an ice pack against my ribs with hands that shook more than he wanted me to notice. "Don't look at me like that," I muttered, half embarrassed, half grateful. "Like what?" he asked. "Like I'm already falling apart." "You are falling apart?" he shot back, but his voice softened. "Doesn't mean I won't keep you together." And just like that, something in my chest shifted. It wasn't love not yet, but it was something dangerously close to it. The weeks that followed blurred into a haze of silence and bandages. Ethan's texts were brief, rushed updates from another time zone. "She's stable now. The doctors are hopeful." Then, "It's harder than I thought, but I'll be home soon." And finally, "Take care of him until I get back." Take care of him, as if I needed reminding that I was the one left behind. But Caleb didn't treat me like someone left behind. He treated me like I was still here, still alive, still worth noticing. He'd cook dinner in silence, sliding the plate in front of me with a muttered, "Eat." He'd sit beside me on the couch, our knees brushing, neither of us moving away. Sometimes at night, when the house was too quiet and my chest ached with loneliness, I'd find him outside on the porch, staring at the stars as if they could explain everything. And I'd sit beside him, our breaths making little clouds in the cold. It was one of those nights when he finally said it. "You know, he doesn't deserve you if he can just leave like that." The words landed like a strike to the ribs. I turned to him, anger flaring. "You don't get it. He had no choice." She's not you," Caleb interrupted, his jaw tight. "And she never will be." For a moment, I hated him for saying it. And then, just as quickly, I hated myself for wanting to believe him. The pull between us grew with every day Ethan stayed gone. It was wrong, I knew it. The thought of betraying the man I loved felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, toes curling over the rock. But the truth was, Ethan had already left me dangling. Caleb was the only one keeping me from falling. One night, after another one of Ethan's clipped, distant calls, I slammed the phone down harder than I meant to. My legs still ached, my chest burned with resentment, and before I could stop myself, I whispered, "I don't know how much longer I can wait." Caleb looked at me then, his eyes dark and steady. "Then don't." I should have pulled away. I should have reminded myself of the promises I'd made. The love I swore would outlast anything. But when his hand reached for mine, fingers threading through with a quiet certainty, I didn't move. I let him hold me, and in that moment, for the first time since Ethan left, I didn't feel abandoned. Caleb didn't kiss me that night. He didn't even lean closer. He just sat there. Our hands tangled together in a silence so fragile I was afraid breathing too loudly would shatter it. And maybe that was what scared me most, that silence could feel more intimate than any kiss Ethan had ever given me. I told myself it was exhaustion, trauma, a hunger for comfort disguised as something else. But when I finally went to bed, I lay awake listening for Caleb's footsteps outside my door, both terrified and desperate that he might actually come. He didn't. The next morning, sunlight broke through the blinds, warm against my face, but nothing inside me felt warm. Ethan's name lit up my phone screen just after 9. My chest lurched before I answered. "Hey!" His voice came, rushed, tinny through the overseas connection. "Hey!" I echoed, trying to sound steady. "She's getting better," he said quickly, almost too quickly. "They think the treatment's working. It'll be a while, but she might actually have a chance now." "That's good," I murmured. I wanted to mean it, but every word felt like splinters in my throat. "And you?" he asked, but it sounded like an afterthought. "How are you holding up?" I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that I wasn't holding up at all, that the nights were too long, my wounds too deep, and that Caleb's presence was both the only thing keeping me alive and the reason I couldn't sleep. But instead I said, "Fine. Caleb's been helping." There was a pause. Then, "Good." I knew he would. Something inside me cracked. Because in that moment, I realized Ethan hadn't just left me with Caleb. He trusted him with me, like passing along a favorite book, a prized possession, as if I were something to be kept safe, not someone to be chosen. After the call, I sat in the kitchen staring at the blank wall until Caleb came in, hair messy from sleep. He poured coffee without looking at me, but the silence between us wasn't awkward, it was heavy. "You talked to him," he said finally. "Yeah. And?" I looked at him, searching for anger or jealousy in his face. There was none. Just patience. Too much patience. "And nothing," I admitted. Caleb set his mug down and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. His eyes met mine, sharp but not unkind. "You're waiting for a man who isn't waiting for you." The words cut because they were true. I hated that they were true. "Stop," I whispered, pressing a hand to my temple. "You don't know him like I do." "Maybe not," Caleb said softly, "but I know you. And I see what this is doing to you." For the first time since Ethan left, tears burned my eyes. I bit them back, but Caleb saw. He always saw. He didn't move closer, didn't touch me. He just stayed there, steady like gravity itself. And I realized how terrifyingly easy it would be to let myself fall. The weeks blurred again, but the tension didn't. If anything, it thickened. We moved around each other in the house like planets caught in each other's orbit, careful but unable to pull away. One evening, I found Caleb outside chopping wood. His shirt clung to his back with sweat, his muscles flexing under the strain. My legs still ached, so I sat on the steps watching him. Every strike of the axe echoed in my chest. "You're staring," he said without looking up. "No, I'm not," I lied too quickly. He smirked, wiping his brow. "You are." I should have looked away, but I didn't. And when he finally set the axe down and walked toward me, my breath caught. He stopped just inches from where I sat, the smell of sweat and wood smoke clinging to him. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" he asked, voice low. "Like what?" My throat was dry. "Like you're afraid of me," he said. Then, softer, "Or maybe afraid of yourself." The air between us was electric. My heart slammed against my ribs, begging me to close the distance. But before I could, he stepped back, shaking his head. "I won't be the reason you betray him," Caleb muttered, grabbing the axe again. But the thing was, Ethan had already betrayed me. He just didn't know it. That night I dreamed of both of them. Ethan's hand slipping from mine as he boarded a plane. Caleb's hand gripping mine, holding me steady. I woke tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, gasping, my body aching with a need I couldn't name. By morning, I couldn't keep it in anymore. "You can't keep doing this," I blurted out as Caleb handed me a cup of coffee. He raised a brow. "Doing what?" "Hovering, staring, saying things that make me—" I stopped, choking on the words. "That make you what?" he pressed, stepping closer. I looked at him, really looked, at the sharp line of his jaw, the softness in his eyes that betrayed every wall he tried to build. My chest ached with the truth I'd been denying. "That make me forget him," I whispered. The silence after that was deafening. Caleb's breath hitched, his hand tightening around the mug. For a second, I thought he'd finally close the space between us. But instead, he set the mug down and walked out of the room without a word. I hated him for leaving. I hated myself more for wanting him to stay. The breaking point came 2 nights later. It was storming outside, rain hammering the roof like it wanted to tear the house apart. I sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the storm through the window. My phone buzzed on the tab light. Was Ethan again. Another rushed update. Another "I'll be home soon." I couldn't bring myself to answer. The thunder cracked, and then I heard footsteps. Caleb entered, hair damp from the rain, a towel slung around his shoulders. His eyes found mine in the dark. "You didn't answer him," he said. "No," my voice was hoarse. "Why not?" "Because I don't know who I'm waiting for anymore," I admitted. Something in his expression broke then. He crossed the room in 3 strides, and before I could think, before I could stop myself, his mouth was on mine. The kiss was rough, desperate, years of restraint collapsing in an instant. I clutched at him, my body betraying every ounce of guilt in my soul. He tasted like rain and coffee, like anger and longing all at once. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "Tell me to stop, and I will," he whispered. His breath was ragged. "Couldn't. I didn't." Instead, I kissed him again. And just like that, the line we'd been towing for weeks was gone. But the guilt was only just beginning. The first kiss should have been enough. A mistake, a fleeting slip we could bury under silence and shame. But the truth was, once the dam cracked, there was no holding back the flood. Caleb kissed like he'd been waiting for years. And maybe he had. Every touch of his lips, every trembling breath against my skin, carried something heavier than lust. It carried the weight of secrets, of longing too long ignored, of the kind of love that shouldn't have existed but burned hotter because of it. When we pulled apart, the storm outside still raged, thunder rolling through the night. My chest heaved, guilt gnawing at me like teeth. "This is wrong," I whispered, though my hands were still clutching his shirt. "I know," Caleb said, his voice hoarse, but he didn't let go either. We stood there in the dark, holding onto each other like 2 men lost at sea, clinging to the same piece of wreckage. The days that followed blurred into something neither of us wanted to name. We didn't talk about what had happened. We didn't set rules. But the air between us changed, charged, alive, dangerous. One night, I woke up to find him sitting on the edge of my bed, his silhouette faint against the window light. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured. I should have told him to leave. Instead, I pulled back the blanket, and when he slid in beside me, his warmth seeping into my bones, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. We didn't make love that night. We didn't even kiss. We just lay there, his hand tangled with mine under the sheets, the quiet intimacy louder than anything. And yet, When the sun rose, the guilt was a fist tightening in my chest. Ethan's face haunted me. His laughter, his promises, the way his eyes used to soften when he looked at me. Every moment with Caleb felt like betrayal but also like survival. I told myself I'd end it, that I'd pull away before we crossed a line we couldn't come back from. But every time Caleb's eyes found mine, steady and unflinching, I crumbled. It happened on a Sunday. We were in the kitchen, the late afternoon sun pouring through the blinds. I was slicing apples, my leg aching after a morning spent limping around the yard. Caleb came up behind me, reaching for a glass in the cupboard. His chest brushed my back, just for a second, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "Careful," he murmured, nodding toward the knife in my hand. My grip faltered, the blade nicking my finger. Blood welled, sharp and red. "Damn it," I hissed. He was already there, taking the knife from me, pressing a paper towel against my finger. His touch was gentle, too gentle, and when I looked up, our faces were inches apart. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Then don't," he said, but his thumb brushed against my hand like a plea. Something broke inside me then. The walls, the excuses, the loyalty I tried to cling to all crumbled. I kissed him, harder than before, desperate and reckless. And this time, neither of us pulled away. The kitchen disappeared. The world disappeared. There was only him, his hands on my skin, his breath hot against my neck, the sound of my name on his lips. When it was over, we lay tangled on the couch, sweat cooling on our skin. My heart pounded with both euphoria and terror. "What are we doing?" I asked, staring at the ceiling. "Something we can't stop," Caleb said simply. And God help me, he was right. But with passion came consequences. Every time my phone buzzed with Ethan's name, I felt sick. Sometimes I answered, forcing cheer into my voice, telling him I was healing, that Caleb was taking good care of me. Other times, I let it ring, staring at the screen until it went dark again. I was building a house of lies, brick by brick, and I knew eventually it would collapse. The collapse began sooner than I thought. One evening, as I sat with Caleb on the porch, watching the sunset bleed across the sky, Ethan's name lit my phone again. This time I answered. "I'm coming home," he said, his voice steadier than it had been in weeks. "Olivia's stable now. They don't need me anymore. I'll be on a flight in 3 days." My stomach dropped. 3 days. That's great. I forced out, my voice hollow. Beside me, Caleb stiffened. He didn't say a word, but the way his hand tightened on the armrest said everything. After the call, the silence between us was unbearable. "He's coming back," I said finally. "I heard," Caleb muttered. I turned to him, my chest aching. "What are we supposed to do?" He met my eyes, his own filled with something raw and unflinching. "We tell him the truth." The thought made me dizzy. "You don't understand. If I tell him, I lose him. I lose everything." Caleb's jaw tightened. "And what do you think you lose if you lie? Him? Or yourself?" I wanted to scream, to run, to undo every moment that had led me here. But I couldn't. Because the truth was, part of me didn't want to. Part of me wanted Caleb. And that part was winning. The next 3 days were torture. Every glance, every brush of skin between us was laced with urgency, like we were both trying to memorize each other before the clock ran out. On the last night, he came to my room without a word. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Our bodies said everything our mouths couldn't. Afterward, he held me, his chest rising and falling beneath my cheek. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "you're not alone. Remember that." I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly it hurt. But the sound of a plane landing echoed in my head, drowning out everything else. The day Ethan returned, the sky was clear, cruelly beautiful. I stood at the arrival's gate, my stomach knotted, Caleb lingering a step behind me. When I saw him, my Ethan walking toward me with a tired smile, my knees almost buckled. He looked thinner, older somehow, but his eyes still lit up when they found mine. "I missed you," he said, pulling me into his arms. I hugged him back, but my heart was a battlefield. Because over Ethan's shoulder, I saw Caleb. And in his eyes, I saw everything I wasn't ready to admit. Everything Ethan wasn't supposed to know. Ethan's embrace should have felt like coming home. For months, I'd imagined this moment. His arms around me, his scent, his warmth. But standing there in the middle of the airport, pressed against his chest, I felt only the weight of what I had done. I missed you so damn much, he whispered into my hair. I clung to him because I didn't know what else to do. But when I opened my eyes, Caleb's gaze was waiting for me just beyond Ethan's shoulder, steady, burning, unbearable. He looked like a man both claiming and letting go in the same breath. The three of us walked out together, but silence wrapped around us like chains. Ethan filled it with stories of Switzerland, of hospital corridors and long nights. His words tumbled out with relief, but his eyes searched mine constantly, as if making sure I was still there, still his. I nodded, smiled, even laughed when I was supposed to. But guilt pressed against my ribs with every breath. The first night back, Ethan fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted. I lay beside him in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight. His hand rested lightly on my stomach, familiar and comforting. But my mind wouldn't stop replaying the sound of Caleb's voice, the weight of his touch, the look in his eyes before he left my room for the last time. I thought I could bury it, that I could slide back into my old life and pretend nothing had happened. But secrets don't stay quiet for long. The cracks began to show within days. "You're different," Ethan said one morning, watching me over his coffee. "Different how?" I asked too quickly. He frowned. "I don't know. Distant, maybe, like part of you's still somewhere else." I forced a smile. "I guess I just got used to the silence while you were gone." But his eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. Ethan wasn't stupid. He never had been. It was Caleb who finally broke the silence. We were alone in the garage, him tinkering with tools while I stood useless, hands shoved in my pockets. "He's going to figure it out," Caleb said without looking at me. "Don't," I muttered. "Don't start. You think you can keep living like this? Smiling at him while you're thinking about me? Lying every time he touches you?" His voice was sharp, but beneath it was something softer, pleading. "I don't want to hurt him," I said, my voice cracking. "And what about me?" Caleb asked, finally turning. His eyes were raw, unguarded. "Do I not count?" The words hit me like a blow, because the truth was he did count. Too much. Before I could answer, the garage door creaked. Ethan stood there, eyes darting between us, his face pale. "What the hell is going on?" he asked. My blood ran cold. The confrontation was inevitable. We sat in the living room that night, the three of us. Ethan on one side, Caleb on the other, and me in the middle, caught in a storm of my own making. "Tell me I'm wrong," Ethan demanded. His voice wasn't angry yet, just wounded, desperate. "Tell me nothing happened while I was gone." The silence stretched. My mouth opened, closed, opened again. But no words came. And in that silence, he had his answer. Ethan's face crumpled. He stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "Jesus Christ. My own brother." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Don't put this all on him." Shut up," Ethan snapped, his voice breaking. He turned back to me. "Was I gone that long? Did I mean so little to you?" The pain in his eyes shattered me. I wanted to reach for him, to explain, to beg forgiveness. But the truth hung between us like smoke. "It wasn't supposed to happen," I whispered. "I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. But my voice failed me." "But you did," Ethan finished bitterly. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, Caleb stood. His voice was quiet, steady. "Blame me, Ethan. I'll take it. But don't take it out on him. He was hurting." You think that makes it better?" Ethan exploded. "You think that makes any of this okay?" His voice cracked on the last word. He stormed out, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the walls. The echo lingered long after he was gone. The days that followed were worse than any wound I'd ever carried. Ethan avoided me, barely speaking except when necessary. Caleb kept his distance too, his presence a shadow I both craved and feared. I thought it was over, that I'd lost them both. But pain has a way of forcing clarity. It was Ethan who came to me first. Late one night, I found him on the porch, staring out at the dark yard. He didn't look up when I sat beside him. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said quietly. My throat tightened. "I don't expect you to." He finally turned, his eyes red. "But I also don't know how to stop loving you." The confession broke something in me. Tears spilled before I could stop them. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." We sat there in silence, the night air heavy around us. Finally, Ethan sighed. "Maybe love isn't about holding on. Maybe it's about knowing when to let go." The words sank deep, settling into the cracks of my heart, because I knew what he was saying. I knew what he was giving me, and I knew what it meant. The next morning, Ethan left. He packed a bag, hugged me once tight, trembling, final, and drove away without looking back. I stood on the porch, watching until his car disappeared, my chest hollow. When I turned, Caleb was there, leaning against the doorway. His eyes searched mine, cautious, uncertain. "He's gone," I said, the words tasting like ash. Caleb nodded slowly. "And what about you?" I took a breath, my heart pounding. "I don't know where this goes. I don't know if it's right, but I know I don't want to face it alone." For a long moment he didn't move. Then, finally, he stepped forward, closing the distance between us. His hand found mine, warm and steady. "Then you won't," he said. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still wounds, still scars, still shadows that lingered. But there was also light, quiet, tentative, fragile. Caleb and I built slowly, carefully, out of honesty this time instead of secrets. Ethan's absence was a ghost in the room, but not a wall between us. And in the quiet moments when Caleb's hand brushed mine, when his laughter broke through the heaviness, I found something I hadn't expected. Not just love, but peace. Months later, as spring returned and the world seemed softer, I stood on the same porch where everything had begun. My leg had healed. My heart was still healing. But when Caleb came up behind me, sliding his arm around my waist, I leaned into him without hesitation. The sky stretched wide and open above us, full of promise. And for the first time in a long time, I believed in tomorrow. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.